My beloved child, listen carefully, don't skip this message, because there is a truth about your connection that your soulmate may have discovered only after someone tried to convince them to walk away from you. At first, they believed the warning. They listened to the person who spoke confidently, the person who claimed to know what was best for them. They were told that getting closer to you would only bring complications. They were told to protect themselves, to forget you, to stop asking questions, and to stay away. But there was one thing that person did not expect: your soulmate eventually discovered the truth for themselves. And when that truth came out, everything they had been told suddenly looked different. There was a moment when your soulmate realized that the story they had been given about you was incomplete. One missing detail changed the entire picture. One conversation exposed a contradiction. One unexpected piece of information made them stop and think, why would someone go this far to keep me away from them? That question stayed in their mind. They couldn't shake it. And the more they thought about it, the more they began to wonder whether the warning had actually been about protecting them, or about controlling their decision. Your soulmate had not wanted to believe anyone was intentionally interfering. They wanted to trust the person who gave them the warning. Maybe it was a friend. Maybe it was someone close to them. Maybe it was someone who claimed they were only trying to help. The message sounded convincing at first: don't get involved with them. They're not right for you. You'll regret it. You need to stay away. And because your soulmate was already uncertain about their feelings, those words found a place inside their mind. They began pulling back. They answered less. They became quieter. They created distance. And perhaps you noticed the change without understanding why. One day everything seemed warm, and the next day the energy felt completely different. You may have wondered whether you had done something wrong. You may have replayed conversations, searching for a mistake you couldn't find. You may have asked yourself why someone who seemed interested suddenly became distant. But there may have been something happening behind the scenes that you never saw. Someone was influencing the story. And your soulmate was listening. The strange part is that the warning may have sounded like concern. That's what made it powerful. It wasn't delivered as an obvious attack. It was wrapped in advice. It sounded like protection. The person may have said, "I'm only telling you this because I care about you." They may have presented themselves as someone trying to save your soulmate from heartbreak. But slowly, your soulmate began noticing that every conversation somehow returned to you. Are you still talking to them? Did you see them again? Why are you giving them another chance? You should move on. At first, your soulmate ignored the pattern. Then they started noticing it. And eventually, they became suspicious. Because when someone genuinely wants to protect you, they usually give you information and allow you to make your own decision. But when someone wants to control your decision, they often repeat the same message until you begin believing it simply because you've heard it so many times. Your soulmate didn't understand this at first. They were confused. They were caught between what they felt and what they had been told. And that internal conflict became exhausting. Because whenever they thought about you, their heart said one thing. Whenever they listened to the warning, their mind said another. They tried to choose logic. They tried to convince themselves that distance was the safer option. They told themselves they were doing the right thing. But then something happened that changed everything. Your soulmate saw something they were never supposed to see. Maybe it was a message. Maybe it was a conversation. Maybe it was a piece of information that had been deliberately left out. Whatever it was, it forced them to question the entire story. They discovered that something they had been told about you simply wasn't true. And suddenly, all those previous conversations came rushing back. Every warning. Every accusation. Every reason they had been given to stay away. Your soulmate started connecting the dots. And once the dots connected, they couldn't unsee the pattern. They began asking questions. Why did you tell me that? Where did you hear this? Why didn't you show me the whole story? Why were you so determined to keep me away from them? The person who had warned them suddenly became defensive. They tried to explain. They tried to change the subject. They said it was complicated. They said they were only trying to help. But your soulmate was no longer satisfied with vague answers. They wanted the truth. And eventually, something was admitted. Not necessarily everything. Not immediately. But enough. Enough to reveal that the warning had not been as innocent as your soulmate believed. And this is where the story becomes deeply emotional. Because your soulmate wasn't only angry at that person. They were angry at themselves. They realized they had allowed someone else's words to influence how they treated you. They realized that while they were listening to somebody else's opinion, you were living with the consequences. They remembered the moments when you looked confused. They remembered the distance they created. They remembered the unanswered messages. They remembered the times you probably wondered what had changed. And suddenly, your soulmate understood. You had been paying the price for a story you never even had the opportunity to defend yourself against. That realization hurt. Because your soulmate began asking themselves a painful question. What if I pushed them away for a reason that wasn't even true? And another question followed. What if they thought I stopped caring? That one hit even harder. Because the truth was more complicated. They hadn't stopped caring. They had been afraid. They had been influenced. They had been confused. And instead of coming directly to you and asking for the truth, they had accepted someone else's version of reality. Your soulmate began remembering everything about you that didn't match the warning. If they were told you were selfish, they remembered the times you gave without asking for anything back. If they were told you didn't care, they remembered the way you noticed things nobody else noticed. If they were told you were difficult, they remembered the patience you showed. If they were told you couldn't be trusted, they remembered moments when you were there when others weren't. And suddenly your soulmate realized something. The person they had been warned about didn't match the person they actually knew. That contradiction became impossible to ignore. Then came the moment that may have changed everything. Someone asked your soulmate, "Why are you suddenly defending them?" Your soulmate looked up and said, "Because I finally realized I should have listened to them instead of listening to everyone else." Silence. That sentence carried regret. Your soulmate wasn't pretending anymore. They weren't trying to protect their pride. They were admitting that they had made a mistake. And sometimes that is one of the hardest things for a person to do. Not saying, "I miss you." Not saying, "I love you." But saying, "I was wrong." Your soulmate may have realized that they owe you an explanation. Not because you demanded one. Not because you chased them. But because their conscience is telling them that you deserve to know why they suddenly pulled away. They may want to tell you that the distance wasn't as simple as it appeared. They may want to explain who spoke to them. They may want to tell you what they were told. They may even fear that you won't believe them. And that's where their anxiety begins. Because they know that from your perspective, their behavior looked like rejection. They know you didn't see the conversations happening behind the scenes. You didn't hear the warnings. You didn't know the doubts being planted. You only saw the result. Distance. Silence. Confusion. And your soulmate now understands that. They understand why you may have protected your heart. They understand why you may have stopped reaching out. They understand why you may have decided that if they wanted to leave, you would let them. And that realization is forcing them to look at their own behavior differently. They may have expected you to chase them. They may have secretly hoped you would prove your love. But you didn't. And that silence taught them something. It taught them that love cannot be forced. It taught them that if they want answers, they must have the courage to ask. It taught them that if they want another chance, they cannot expect you to erase the pain they caused simply because they finally understand what happened. This is where your power returns to you. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to defend your character to everyone. You don't have to convince someone who already knows your heart. If your soulmate wants the truth, they can seek it. If they want clarity, they can ask. If they want to rebuild trust, they can take responsibility. And if they come back, don't only listen to the explanation. Watch what happens afterward. Because apologies are meaningful when behavior changes. Words are powerful when actions support them. And love becomes trustworthy when it consistently chooses honesty. Your soulmate may now be realizing that the person who warned them to stay away accidentally revealed something much bigger. They revealed who was willing to interfere. They revealed who was afraid of your connection. They revealed who wanted your soulmate's attention pointed somewhere else. But remember this, don't become consumed with finding someone to blame. You don't need revenge. You don't need confrontation. You don't need to expose anyone. Truth has its own way of coming to light. What matters is what you do with the truth once it arrives. And perhaps the greatest lesson in this entire story is that your soulmate now understands the difference between someone else's opinion and their own experience. They were told who you were. But they eventually remembered who you actually were. That distinction changed everything. Because nobody else can fully explain what another person means to your heart. They can offer opinions. They can give advice. They can share their experiences. But ultimately, your soulmate has to live with their own choices. And perhaps they are finally ready to make a choice based on what they genuinely feel, not what somebody else told them to feel. Imagine your soulmate sitting alone after discovering the truth. No crowd. No friends. No distractions. Just them and their thoughts. They may look at old messages. They may remember your voice. They may revisit memories they tried to bury. And they may quietly ask themselves, why did I let someone else's words become louder than my own heart? That question may stay with them for a long time. Because regret isn't always about losing someone. Sometimes regret is realizing that you participated in your own loss. They may realize that they had opportunities to communicate with you. They had opportunities to ask questions. They had opportunities to trust what they personally experienced. But instead, they allowed fear to make decisions for them. And now they have to decide whether they are willing to correct that mistake. This is where you need to stay grounded. Don't assume that someone's realization automatically means everything will be fixed overnight. Real life doesn't work that way. A person can realize the truth and still need time to process it. They can miss you and still be afraid. They can regret their actions and still not know how to approach you. They can love someone and still need to learn how to communicate maturely. So don't measure the future by one emotional moment. Measure it by consistent action. If your soulmate truly understands what happened, they will eventually show it through their behavior. They will stop allowing other people's opinions to control their relationship with you. They will communicate directly. They will ask questions instead of assuming. They will listen instead of reacting. They will take responsibility instead of blaming circumstances. And most importantly, they will understand that trust cannot simply be demanded. It must be rebuilt. Maybe that's why the truth came out now. Not to create more drama. Not to make you obsess over who said what. But to reveal something that needed to be understood before anything healthy could happen next. Sometimes clarity arrives after confusion because you need to see what was really happening. Sometimes distance reveals what closeness was hiding. Sometimes silence forces people to confront emotions they were avoiding. And sometimes the truth arrives at the exact moment someone is finally ready to accept it. Your soulmate may now be looking back at the entire situation differently. The warning that once sounded convincing now sounds suspicious. The reasons they once accepted no longer feel strong. The fear that once controlled them is beginning to lose its power. And your memory is becoming clearer. Not because you changed, but because the false story around you is disappearing. That is powerful. Because you don't have to fight every lie told about you. You don't have to stand in every courtroom and defend your heart. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply to remain who you are. Let time reveal consistency. Let truth reveal contradictions. Let actions speak. And let people discover reality for themselves. If your soulmate comes back, don't punish them for being confused forever. But don't ignore what happened either. You can forgive someone and still require accountability. You can love someone and still have boundaries. You can understand why someone made a mistake without pretending the mistake didn't hurt. You can give another chance without giving unlimited chances. Those are signs of emotional strength. And perhaps your soulmate is beginning to understand that strength in you. They may realize that you were never trying to control them. You were simply hoping to be understood. And now they may be the one trying to find a way back to a conversation they should have had long ago. Maybe their first message won't be dramatic. Maybe it will simply say, "Can we talk?" Maybe it will be an apology. Maybe it will be a question. Maybe they will admit that they heard things about you and believed them. Maybe they will finally tell you what happened. Whatever form it takes, remember this. You don't have to respond from pain. Respond from clarity. You don't have to reopen a door just because someone knocks. You can decide whether the person standing outside has changed enough to deserve another conversation. And if you choose to open that door, open it slowly. Let trust grow naturally. Let the truth be discussed. Let the past be acknowledged. Let the future be earned. Because the real victory isn't simply getting your soulmate back. The real victory is reaching a place where neither of you allows outsiders, fear, pride, or assumptions to dictate what happens between you. That is the kind of connection worth protecting. Not one built on secrecy and emotional games. One built on truth. One built on communication. One built on mutual respect. One where two people can say, "If you hear something about me, come to me first." That one sentence can save an entire relationship. And maybe that is what your soulmate learned from this experience. They learned that listening to everyone except the person involved can create unnecessary pain. They learned that assumptions can destroy something real. They learned that fear can make people walk away from what they actually want. And most importantly, they learned that truth should never be outsourced. If they want to know who you are, they need to know you. Not someone else's version of you. Not a rumor. Not an accusation. Not a story told in your absence. You. The person they actually experienced. The person whose presence made them feel something. The person they couldn't completely forget even after they walked away. And perhaps that is why this story feels so intense. Because the warning didn't end the connection. It only created a period of confusion. Eventually, reality spoke louder. And when reality spoke, your soulmate had to make a choice. Believe the old story, or believe what they finally discovered. They chose the truth. Now the question is what they will do with it. Will they remain silent? Will they apologize? Will they reach out? Will they finally explain? Only time and their actions can answer that. But you don't have to sit frozen waiting for the answer. Keep living. Keep growing. Keep your heart open to life. And if the right conversation arrives, meet it with wisdom. Your story doesn't need to be rushed. Your healing doesn't need to be interrupted. And your peace doesn't need to be sacrificed for someone else's realization. Maybe your soulmate needed to lose access to you for a while to understand your value. Maybe they needed the silence to hear their own thoughts. Maybe they needed the wrong advice to discover how important it was to trust their own heart. Whatever the reason, let the lesson be complete. Don't return to the same cycle. If something begins again, let it begin differently. And when the truth finally stands in front of you, don't be afraid of it. Truth may hurt at first. But confusion hurts longer. Truth gives you something confusion never can. Freedom. Freedom to choose. Freedom to forgive. Freedom to walk away. Freedom to begin again. Freedom to love without wondering whether someone else's words are secretly controlling the relationship. So, my beloved child, remember this tonight. Someone may have warned your soulmate to stay away from you. They may have believed the warning. They may have created distance because of it. But the truth eventually became louder than the fear. And when your soulmate discovered what was really happening, they didn't just question the warning. They questioned everything they thought they knew. They realized that sometimes the person telling you to walk away is not seeing the entire picture. They realized that sometimes people give advice based on their own fears, experiences, jealousy, assumptions, or misunderstandings. And they realized that your story could only be understood by actually listening to you. That realization may become the beginning of a completely different chapter. Not because destiny forces two people together. Not because you are required to wait. But because honesty creates possibilities that fear destroys. So don't chase. Don't panic. Don't try to expose anyone. Don't spend your nights wondering who said what. Let the truth breathe. Let your soulmate process what they discovered. And most importantly, let yourself continue becoming stronger. Because if they return, you will meet them from strength. And if they don't, you will still have your peace. Either way, you win by refusing to abandon yourself. And perhaps one day, when your soulmate finally sits across from you, there will be no third person influencing the conversation. No rumors. No warnings. No assumptions. Just two people looking at each other and finally telling the truth. Maybe they will say, "I was told to stay away from you." Maybe you will ask, "Why did you believe them?" And perhaps they will look down, take a breath, and answer, "Because I was afraid. But then I discovered the truth." And that sentence may be the moment everything becomes clear. Not because it erases the past, but because it explains it. And sometimes an explanation doesn't change what happened. It simply allows two people to finally understand it. So hold on to your peace. Hold on to your dignity. Hold on to your faith in truth. The people who are meant to understand you will eventually look beyond rumors and see reality. And the people who choose to judge you without knowing you were never qualified to define your worth. Your soulmate's journey is theirs. Your journey is yours. If your paths meet again, let it be because both of you are ready for something healthier, clearer, and more honest than before. And if the truth has truly changed your soulmate's heart, then you won't need to chase the evidence. Their actions will eventually tell the story. Their consistency will tell the story. Their courage will tell the story. Their willingness to take responsibility will tell the story. And when that happens, you won't have to wonder anymore. Because the truth won't need to shout. It will simply become impossible to ignore. So breathe. Release the fear. Let the past settle. Let the hidden conversations remain where they belong. And remember one final thing. Someone may have warned your soulmate to stay away from you, but they could never control what your soulmate ultimately discovered for themselves. The truth found its way through the confusion. The truth survived the distance. The truth outlasted the warning. And now, whatever happens next, you have something far more valuable than another person's promise. You have clarity. You have your own worth. You have your own path. And you have the freedom to decide what deserves a place in your future. The story isn't about proving that someone was wrong. It's about finally seeing what is right for you. And if love returns, let it return honestly. If an apology comes, let it come with accountability. If a conversation begins, let it begin with truth. If a new chapter opens, let it be written differently. Because the greatest ending isn't simply hearing, "I still love you." The greatest ending is hearing, "I finally understand what happened, I take responsibility for my part, and I'm ready to show you through my actions that I will never again let someone else's voice speak louder than the truth between us." That is the kind of ending worth waiting for. And if it comes, you'll know. Not because someone promised it, but because their actions will finally make the truth impossible to deny.